the iron smothered her. It had snuffed out the fire in her veins as surely as if the flames had been doused. She could hear water, even in this iron box, even with the iron mask and chains adorning her like ribbons of silk. The roaring, the endless rushing of water over stone. It filled the gaps between her screaming. Strength is a universal concept used to define how long someone can keep going, but it is also a very personal challenge. Sometimes strength comes when you are entirely alone, and sometimes it comes when no one else knows you need it. Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas and Shaking by Raygan Hogue, as published in the 2019-2020 edition of Voices. She had tried to keep track of the days, but she did not know how long they kept her in that iron box, in this temple of pain. She did not know how long the gaps lasted between her screaming and waking, between the pain ending and starting anew. Days, months, years, they bled together. A princess who was to live for 1,000 years, longer, that had been her gift, but it was now her curse. Just another curse to bear, as heavy as the one placed on her to right an ancient wrong, to pay another's debt and become trapped in it. She did not feel the warm hand of the goddess who had blessed her. She wondered if that goddess of light and flame even cared that she now lay trapped within the iron box. The gods did not care. She knew they would not come for her, save her, so she did not bother praying to them. But she still told herself the story, still sometimes imagined that the river sang it to her, that the darkness, living within that sealed coffin, sang it to her as well. Once upon a time, in a land long since burned to ash, there lived a young princess who loved her kingdom. But down she would drift, deep into that sea of darkness, into that sea of flame, down so deep that when the whip cracked and bones sundered, she sometimes did not feel it. Most times she did. It was during those infinite hours when she had come close, too close to breaking, and only the story had kept her from doing so. They were blurring. The lies and truths and memories sleep in the blackness in the iron coffin. It was all beginning to blur, like ink on water. So she told herself the story. The darkness and flame deep within her whispered it, and the river sang it back. Locked in that coffin, hidden on an island within the heart of a river, the princess recited the story over and over and over. Once upon a time, in a land long since burned to ash, there lived a young princess who loved her kingdom. He is not my oxygen. He is not the reason I wake in the morning. His touch does not cause me to stop functioning. He is not that powerful. Have you ever made eye contact with the sun? Have you ever given sound to a silent paper? I have. I've reached for the stars and knew, in the deepest and most vulnerable part of my being that the stars were inching closer to kiss my fingertips. I've read in books that a simple touch could shake someone's universe. People believe that to be true, but those people must be blind and oblivious. They must not have heard the cries of Pluto in the midst of a winter storm. They've overlooked the stretch marks of the lands, the way the ground still roars and shakes. They do not realize that rivers must be caused by a mountain's continuous stream of tears. They do not know what shattered means. His arms, constricted around my waist, will not affect the world. But his hands, wringing my neck, does not mean that he is stronger. Our fingers entwined do not mean that the world is complete. His hand is not the most important thing I have held. Have you ever plucked a cord so sweet it was a slice of heaven? Have you ever flipped through the pages of a conundrum? Have you heard a painting's voice? I have learned to track letters across pieces of paper, to trail the footprints of words. I have the ability to write my thoughts in pencil or in ink. I can change the world with a spatula in my hand or a notebook as my weapon. I understand the language of silence. He does not complete me. He is not some half that makes me whole. He doesn't understand when I say that I will be married to myself first, and he cannot set my world spinning. I have tangled with fallen leaves and felt the wind lead my steps. My favorite conversations are with my radio, and the best hug I have ever received was the ocean crashing into me. Have you ever held a pen and knew that you were writing the future? Have you ever ran so fast that the wind caught in your hair and you could fly? Will you ever learn that technology will die long before my voice will be silenced again? This is a revolution cry, and when I speak, I will send the world shaking.